তাকে আমি একটু স্টেশন থেকে বাড়ি যাচ্ছি, তুই একটু 10 মিনিট, ম্যাম যদি কিছু বলেন একটু রিপ্লাই করবি, আমি তারপরে থেকে আবার করছি। ম্যামের ল্যাপটপ থেকে লগ ইন হচ্ছে না, বলছি ইনভ্যালিড কোড দেখাচ্ছে, কিন্তু মোবাইল থেকে হচ্ছে। আর তোর কি ম্যামের দুটো আরেকটা কোনো ইমেল থেকে এসেছিল কি?
না ম্যাম, তো একটা ইমেল আইডি থেকে একবার মানে জয়েন করলো, আমি তো অ্যাপ্রুভ করে দিলাম, উনি জয়েন হয়েছিলেন, আবার বেরিয়ে গেলেন কেন বুঝলাম না।
হ্যাঁ, একটাতে বলছে যে ইনভ্যালিড, ল্যাপটপে যখন ওপেন করছেন মানে ইনভ্যালিড মিটিং লিঙ্ক দেখাচ্ছে, একই মিটিং লিঙ্ক যদিও।
উনি তাহলে লিংকে ক্লিক করে এ করতে পারল না, না হলে হয়তো উনি
না
ওই
না, হ্যাঁ,
নাম্বারটা
না
মেরে করতে যাচ্ছেন, হয়তো ওখানে ওই ক্যাপিটাল লেটার আর ওই স্মল লেটারের
হ্যাঁ
পার্থক্যের
হ্যাঁ,
জন্য
দাঁড়া,
হয়তো
হ্যাঁ আমি
ওটা একটু
আরেকটা
করতে
বললাম
হবে।
যে পুরো পুরো মিটিং লিঙ্কটা কপি করে ক্রমে সার্চ করলেও চলে আসে, আমি ওটা বললাম। দেখি ম্যামের হয় কি, ম্যামকে একবার বলছি।
থ্যাংক ইউ আজিমুল, হোয়াট আ রিলিফ। বাপরে বাপ, আমার কি ভীষণ লাগছিল, নার্ভাস লাগছিল, কারণ ফোন থেকে আমি খুব একটা নই, সেভি নই ফোনটা। যাকগে, ফাইনালি তাহলে আমি এটা করতে পারলাম আর কি, জয়েন করতে পারলাম। ঠিক আছে, চলো লেট আস সি, ওয়েট করি এবার। গুড আফটারনুন তপশ্রী।
গুড আফটারনুন, বলো।
বলছি যে কি বলে, তো রিসোর্স পার্সনই তো জয়েন করেননি এখনো।
না, সেটাই দেখছি, স্যারও তো জয়েন করেননি।
স্যার তো ঠিক আছে, স্যারকে আরেকবার বললেই তো, আমার সঙ্গে কথা হয়েছে, স্যারের জন্য চিন্তা করছি না, আমার তো স্পিকারের জন্যই চিন্তা হচ্ছে, উনি জয়েন করতে পারছেন না নাকি কি জানি, বুঝতেও পারছি না।
আর তোমার অন্য কান্ট্রি থেকে জয়েন করবে না?
হ্যাঁ, আর ফোন নাম্বারটা দিয়েছে, ফোন নাম্বারটাও কাজ করছে, মানে তো এ নেই, ঠিক মতন আমি কাজ করছে বলে মনে হয় না।
দেখা যাক, লেটস
মুশকিল। কালকে রাত্রিবেলাও মেল পাঠালেন যে পাওয়ার পয়েন্ট দিতে চান, সেই হেনা তেনা, আমি আবার বলেও দিলাম।
এখনো 2টো বাজেনি, দুটোতে
না,
জয়েন
কিন্তু উনি আমাকে বলেছিলেন যে I try to enter the room a few minutes before 12 to be ready. Also wanted to check my number is ঠিক আছে, see you tomorrow. হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু এই নাম্বারটা তো হচ্ছে না, মানে কানেক্ট করতে পারছি না, এমনি ভাবেও না, 98 দিয়ে একটা নাম্বার।
এমনি তোমার সাথে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে কন্ট্যাক্ট আছে?
মেলে আমি তো আমার নাম্বার দিয়ে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ, আমি লিখেও দিয়েছিলাম এটা আমার হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ নাম্বার। সো এনি প্রবলেম মানে লেট মি নো। কিন্তু আমার খুব টেনশন হচ্ছে এখন। উনি
আজকে একবারও কন্ট্যাক্ট হয়েছে দিদি?
আজকে হয়নি, কালকে রাত্রেবেলা আমার সঙ্গে লাস্ট কথা হয়েছে।
তাহলে আমার মনে হয় হয়ে যাবে, হয়তো নেটওয়ার্ক ইস্যু বা কিছু, অন্য কান্ট্রি থেকে তো। কালকে যখন কথা
সাথে দেরি হতেই পারে।
একটু স্যারও এসে গেছেন, আমি এক্ষুনি একটা পাঠালাম, মেসেজও পাঠালাম, মেল পাঠালাম, সেটা বুঝতে পারছি।
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে কানেক্ট করো।
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে কানেক্ট করতে পারছি না তো, এই নাম্বারটা, ওনার নাম্বারটা যেটা না দিয়েছেন, কান্ট্রি কোড, মানে উনি তো কোড দিয়েই দিয়েছেন।
+98।
হ্যাঁ, 98 দিয়েই তো আমি দিলাম, কিন্তু আমাকে বাংলায় বলছে এটার কোনো অস্তিত্ব নেই, কিন্তু কালকেই উনি আমাকে পাঠিয়েছেন, নাম্বার পাঠিয়েছেন।
তো টেনশন করো না, জয়েন করে যাবেন।
কি জানি,
আমাদের স্টুডেন্টরাও তো এখন মাত্র কয়েকজনই এসছে, স্টুডেন্টদের গ্রুপে তো দেওয়া হয়েছে তো। আজিমুল, your friends are aware of this?
Yes ma'am.
Should I repost it?
Hello, 6737.
Should I repost it in the group?
Yes ma'am.
Okay,
আরেকবার দিলে
ঠিক আছে দিচ্ছি।
ফোন করতেও তো চেষ্টা করছি।
ম্যাম অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাদের সেমিস্টারে সবাই আজকে ওই মার্কশিট নিতে গিয়েছে, ফলে আমাদের সেমিস্টার থেকে হয়তো কমজন জয়েন করতে পারে।
স্যার, আমার মনে হয় আপনার মানে অনেক কাজের মধ্যে আপনাকে এখন বিরক্ত করি না, উনি জয়েন করলে আপনাকে আমি জানাচ্ছি, নইলে বেকার আপনার সময় নষ্ট। স্যার শুনতে পেলেন কিনা কি জানি। ফোনও পাচ্ছি না কিছুতেই। ঠিকই আছে।
তুমি কি এখন একবার মেল করেছো?
একটু আগেই করলাম রেডি হই, কিন্তু সেটার তো কোনো পাচ্ছি না, রেসপন্স পাচ্ছি না। ওকে ওকে, yes but I get the can't find the meeting error। এই দেখো ওনারও সেম হচ্ছে।
ম্যাম আপনি ওই যে ফ্ল্যাটটা পাঠিয়ে দিন ম্যাম।
ওকে
আপনি ম্যাম শুধু লিংকটা কপি করে পাঠিয়েছিলেন ম্যাম। ম্যাম আপনি আপনার মতো হয়তো একই প্রবলেম হচ্ছে, আপনি ওই লিংকটা ফ্ল্যাটটা পাঠিয়ে দিন।
ওকে
আমি একবার সেম 3 কেও পাঠিয়ে দিচ্ছি।
পাঠিয়ে দিলাম, লিখেও দিলাম ওনাকে।
গুগল মিট কোডটা লিখে দিয়েছো তো, যে কিছু না হলে
ওইটা
অন্তত
ফ্লায়ারটাই পাঠিয়ে দিলাম। ওর হ্যাঁ, কি এটা আমারও হচ্ছিল সেম প্রবলেম, আমি জয়েন করতে পারছিলাম না কিছুতেই, আমাকে ওই এরর 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 দেখাচ্ছিল। তারপরে আজিমুল বললো ফ্লায়ারটা আপনি এ করুন, কি বলে নিজের এতে নিন, মেল এতে নিন, নিয়ে তারপরে ওর উপরে ক্লিক করুন তাহলে আসবে, সেই করে আসলো আর কি। এটা কেন প্রবলেমটা হলো বুঝলাম না, এটা তো কখনো হয় না।
কিন্তু আমরা জাস্ট ফ্লায়ারে ক্লিক করলাম আর ঢুকে গেলাম।
হ্যাঁ, ফ্লায়ারে আমার তো ফোনের থেকে সঙ্গে সঙ্গে ঢুকতে পারলাম,
আমিও তাই,
ফোনের থেকে
আমরাও তাই
অসুবিধা হলো
ঢুকলাম।
না, কিন্তু ল্যাপটপ থেকে অসুবিধা হচ্ছিল, ল্যাপটপটা কিছুতেই ওই এরর 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 আমাকেও তাই দেখাচ্ছিল। You can't find the meeting you are trying to কি বলে জয়েন, বারবার একই কথা দেখাচ্ছিল। দেখ এখন তো পাঠালাম, দেখা যাক। এই টেকনিক্যাল প্রবলেম গুলো তো থেকেই যায়।
দিদি ডক্টর সোহেল কি কিছু রিপ্লাই করলেন? হ্যালো দিদি?
হ্যাঁ রে, হ্যাঁ বলো।
বলছি ডক্টর সোহেল কি কিছু রিপ্লাই করলেন?
না, দুটোর সাথে আমি পাঠালাম, 2:02 তো উনি ওটা লিখলেন আই কান্ট ফাইন্ড দ্য মিটিং করে, তবে 2টোর সাথে আমি পাঠালাম। তারপরে এখন কটা বাজে? 13,
2:13।
6 মিনিট। বুঝতে পারছি না, আমি বুঝতে পারছি না নাকি মুশকিল।
না ওরা জেনারেলি খুব পাঞ্চুয়াল।
আপনি যখন লিঙ্কটা পাঠিয়েছিলেন শুধু ম্যাম মিটিং কোডটা দিয়েছিলেন না ম্যাম প্রথমে ওই ওয়েবগুলো ধরেই?
না শুধু মিটিং কোডটা দিয়েছিলাম।
ওই ম্যাম ওই পুরো HTTPS ওগুলো পুরোটাই কপি করে আরেকবার দিয়ে দেখতে পারতেন।
হ্যাঁ আমি তো আবার ফ্লায়ারটা পাঠিয়ে দিলাম তো। হ্যাঁ আমি যেরকম ভাবে জয়েন করলাম আমি তো ওনাকে আবার সেরকম ভাবেই দিলাম। এবার আমি লিখেও দিলাম যে আমি আপনাকে ফ্লায়ারটা পাঠাচ্ছি অ্যান্ড ইউ উইল বি এবল টু জয়েন। উনি থ্যাঙ্কসও লিখলেন 2টোর সাথে। তারপরে আবার কি হলো কে জানে, যত যন্ত্রণা।
রাকেশ?
হ্যাঁ বল।
আসেনি কোনো রিকোয়েস্ট?
না আসেনি এখনো।
দিদি আরেকবার একটা মেল করে দেখো।
হ্যাঁ করলাম, উনি লিখছেন I haven't received the flyer, আর কিন্তু আমি ফ্লায়ারটা তো দুবার পাঠালাম and I still get the same error message when I insert the link and click on join. সেটা হচ্ছেই, কিন্তু ফ্লায়ার
ম্যাম আপনি মিটিং লিংকটা আমি আপনাকে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে পাঠাচ্ছি, আপনি ম্যাম ওটা শুধু ইমেইলেই ওটা পাঠিয়ে দিন, ওটাতে ক্লিক করলেই হয়ে যাবে। মনে হয়তো
ঠিক আছে
পিডিএফ ভিউয়ারে কোনো প্রবলেম হতে পারে।
ওকে ঠিক আছে।
ম্যাম ওই ক্যারেক্টারটা দেখুন তো ম্যাম, ঠিক আছে কি ম্যাম? XTQIAGGXVU মিটিং লিংকটা আপনি আরেকবার চেক করে নেবেন তো ম্যাম। হ্যালো ম্যাম, কোথায় গেলেন?
Oh, he has joined. Okay. Sorry, Dr. Soheil, for all the trouble, but then all's well that ends well. Actually, we are all ready to start and listen, and we are all eagerly expecting to hear from you. Okay, now that we are ready, I think we shall start now. Dr. Soheil, kindly unmute yourself when you talk, otherwise we won't be able to listen.
Okay.
Taposhri.
Is that better now?
Yeah. You're audible now, fully audible. Thank you.
Sir,
Okay.
sir, you're here?
Is the volume okay?
Yeah, everything is all right now. Okay.
Sir?
Yes?
Principal, sir.
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Sir is here. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Department of English of Dhruba Halder College, I warmly welcome you to today's international webinar. Today, we have all assembled here in this virtual platform to listen to a renowned speaker, Dr. Kian Soheil. But before we proceed with the webinar, I request Dr. Shottobroto Sahu, Principal, Dhruba Halder College, to kindly address the audience. Over to you,
Thank
sir.
you. Good afternoon. honorable speaker, respected teachers, and my dear students. It is my pleasure to welcome you all in this webinar on some instances of classical mythology in English literature organized by Department of English, Dhruba Halder College. I would like to convey my thanks to Professor Sudokshina Sengupta, Head of the Department of English, Dhruba Halder College, and other faculty members of the department for their sincerest effort to organize this webinar for our students. It is a great pleasure for us that Dr. Kian Soheil of Shahid Beheshti University of Iran agreed to spend his valuable time with our students. We are very much grateful to him. He consented to deliver his lecture for our students. I hope our students will be very much beneficial from this lecture. They are really fortunate that they are getting opportunity to interact with Dr. Soheil. I hope this webinar will be very much enjoyable to our students. Hope for a grand success of this webinar. Welcome you all once again and thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words of encouragement. Sir, you have been extremely supportive and the prime source of our inspiration. I now request Professor Sudokshina Sengupta, Head Department of English, Dhruba Halder College, and IQAC Coordinator, to kindly proceed with her introductory speech.
Respected Principal, sir, Honorable Resource Person, Dr. Soheil, my friends and colleagues, and all my dear students. We are extremely happy to host this afternoon's webinar on a topic which is very close to our heart. Most of us have grown up listening to stories, usually narrated by elders in the family, or reading stories ourselves. As children, I'm sure all of us would be engrossed in stories that dealt particularly with the supernatural, the superheroes, gods, demons, deities, etc., etc. And this is exactly where the importance of mythology comes in. Now, what exactly do we mean by mythology? Basically, in short, we can say that it is a collection of myths. But one good definition is found in the American Heritage Dictionary, which defines mythology, and I quote, "It is a fiction or half-truth, especially one that forms part of an ideology," unquote. Another good dictionary defines myth as, again I quote, "a story presented as historical, dealing with the traditions specific to a culture or a group of people," unquote. These stories can either be cosmological, or like battles between deities, or mundane, which can be very average, ordinary person doing supernatural or superhuman things under certain circumstances. And this has been pointed out by a journalist, Brian Griffin. Now the question is, what is the importance of mythology today? Are these merely stories of entertainment, or do these have any other value, especially a didactic value? A close look at mythologies tells us that these reflect the traditions and culture of a nation, their value system, and a constant reminder of where we come from, what our roots are. Again, mythologies and religion have a kind of a connection that cannot be overlooked in any way. Most of these stories have the element of the good triumphing over the evil in a battle. The protagonist always winning against the antagonist. And on his journey, he gets to learn, the hero gets to learn a lot of things about values and life itself. So The importance of mythologies cannot be undermined even today. These stories are popular, so popular even today that a lot of children's books also have incorporated myths and fables. And I think one glaring example is J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter books, which weaves a number of myths in all the books. Now, the purpose of this afternoon's webinar is to show how certain mythologies have been incorporated in English texts, making these rich in substance and form. We feel honored again to have with us Dr. Kian Soheil from Shahid Beheshti University as the resource person. And on behalf of the Department of English, Dhruba Halder College, I extend a warm welcome to him once again. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Taposri.
Thank you, Shudokinadi, but I think he left. There must be some technical error on his part, some technical problem. Is Dr. Soheil here? Hello? Hello?
No, ma'am, he has left the meeting. I think
Yes.
probably
Sorry.
network issue.
We'll have to wait for him to. Please bear with us. We're just waiting for the speaker to join.
It's probably the network issue.
Thank you, Shudokinadi, for that wonderful introductory speech.
No, I was just trying to remind everybody what mythologies are and how mythologies are important even today in our basic lives. So that is it in very few words and in short. Now what do we do now?
Let us just wait for him to join, because he joined once, so I think he'll be able to join again. Once he joins, Shudokinadi, instead of repeating you once again, we will just ask Bula to proceed.
Exactly. Now Bula can proceed.
Sir is here.
So, you are ready.
Sir, can you hear us, sir?
Yes,
Dr.
sorry
Soheil?
about that. I don't know what happened.
Maybe the connection snapped, maybe.
Maybe some technical error. I now request my colleague, Professor Bularani Hauladar, to kindly share the bio note of the speaker with us.
Thank you, Taposri. Good afternoon, everyone present in this webinar. I feel it my privilege to introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Kian Soheil, head of the Department of English, Shahid Beheshti University, Iran. Dr. Soheil received his BA from Boston University, US, and his MA and PhD from King's College, London. His main field of interest is the Victorian period, especially Robert Browning. His research interest also includes world literature, classical mythology, and drama. He accepts PhD supervision in drama, mythology, fantasy, short story, and children's literature as well. He has to his credit numerous scholarly papers in many reputed international journals, like Text Matters, a journal of literature, theory, and culture, American British Studies Annual, International Journal of Comparative Literature and Translation Studies, International Journal of Applied Linguistics and English Literature, etc. Today, he's going to deliver his talk on one of the areas of his research interest, that is classical mythology in English literature. Sir, we are very keen on hearing you on this topic. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Taposri.
Thank you, Bula. So we are all very excited to listen to this wonderful topic. So without any further delay, So please proceed with your talk. Eagerly
Thank you
waiting
very
to
much.
hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your kind words. Thanks to the head and the whole English department and the head of university. And thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. Now, just before I begin my PowerPoint, just wanted to give a background to how all this came about. We have a course on mythology in our BA curriculum, and I teach that course most of the time. What we do three things in that course. We like to introduce the students to classical mythology. We don't have time to do other mythologies, Mesopotamian mythology, Norse mythology, but since classical is the most relevant to English literature, we've concentrated on that one. And Edith Hamilton's text, whether fortunately or unfortunately, is still the only text I've found that is at the right level and comprehensive enough to serve as a basis for that class. So we're still using that one. If anyone knows of a modern version that does the same things as that text, I'd be grateful to know about it. Thank you. So we introduced the students to the mythology. Then we ask them to be able to identify those mythological allusions, references in works of literature. And the third step, which is really the important step, is for the students to be able to discuss why the author, the writer, has used the myth, how she has used it, and what benefit, what levels of meaning, what effect the allusion, the reference has given to that instant or to the whole work, etc. So it's very simple. Identify the allusion and see how it works in the text. Of course, the trick is to decide how much of the allusion, how much of the myth is relevant to that text. And that is easy because the text itself should provide that information. So you might hear, I don't know if you're hearing, I have a cat and he might interrupt us at various points. I apologize beforehand. Now, I'll try to upload my PowerPoint. I've been told to click on Present Now, minimize the meeting, and you should be able to see it. So, Present Now. Okay. My entire screen, I think. All right, then share. Now the share icon doesn't seem to be active.
You'll have to choose your file first. Either it must be either
Okay.
in the documents or on the desktop.
Okay, my file is on. Can you see my
No,
file
not
yet?
yet. Not yet. No,
Not yet.
we won't be able to see your file. You will be able to see that yourself. So you'll have to
Okay.
sort of choose the file and then click on share.
Okay. Now, when I click on now, I have to click on Present Now
Yeah,
on the bottom
yeah,
of the.
yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
When I do that, it
Yeah.
asks me your entire screen, a
Yeah,
window, a tab.
Right.
Which one should I choose?
Entire screen. That's what I do.
Okay.
Entire screen.
Okay.
And then
Now,
either from the desktop, yeah, or you will be having your file on your document. So you click on that and then click on share now.
Okay. All right. My share icon is not active.
How could it be? It's written share.
Yes, share,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
cancel on the
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
The cancel is active. The share isn't.
Oh my. Tricky situation.
So there is a share screen option in your Meet.
Okay, let's see. More options. Let's see. Full screen. No.
So there is a share screen option. The bottom of our screen.
Okay. I don't seem to find it.
Do you able to find the 3 dot in your screen at the very bottom?
Yes. Yes.
Click on that, and then you will
Yes.
find a share screen option.
I don't seem. How about full screen? Should I click on that? No.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
Yes, sir. You try that.
Yeah.
You try that one, that option.
Okay, I did, but no, it's okay. Let's see. Settings. No, nothing in settings. Okay. How about show everyone? No, that's showing all the people. Chats with everyone. Activities. Whiteboarding. No. Very sorry about this.
Where have you kept your file? Under the list of documents or on the desktop?
My file is on my desktop.
Yeah, so
Okay.
then you have to click on the file on your desktop itself and then share the screen with us.
Okay, my file is, so I shouldn't open my file yet, right?
Yeah, you have to open your file.
Okay, my file is open. It's on my screen now.
Okay, now you'll have to share it with us. Bula, can you guide a bit? Bula.
But I still, my share.
Yeah, actually, I'm opening my laptop and I'm just trying to see what are the options that come in laptop. since sir is also trying from
Yes,
laptop.
yes, ma'am. I'm doing the same.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to do.
Let me see.
Wait a bit. Arjun, can you just forward me the link?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Okay, I got it. Do you see it now?
Can't. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes,
now. Yeah, right.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. I don't know what I did. I won't be able to repeat it, but
Anyway, it serves our purpose at least.
okay. You're seeing this now.
Right.
Everyone sees the screen.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Okay, let's begin. All right, this is for anyone who's tried to give medicine to a cat. I think this should be amusing. But the point, of course, is that mythology has always been with us, always will be with us, because along with fairy tales, folk tales, ancient parables, of which your country is the granddaddy of them all, they are the essence, and as the head of the department told us earlier, these are tales of human feeling, activity, fears, questions that have been with us for thousands of years, and like river rocks have been turned and mulled over and added to and subtracted until you've gotten the essence of them. And they are infinitely adaptable, and each age and each society uses them constantly to deal with their concerns. Now, we have various ways that we use myths in literature. I'm just going to go through some of them very quickly. Many of the examples you probably know, so I won't spend too much time on. I'm assuming people have some basic knowledge of myth, but I'll quickly tell the myth when necessary as well. So don't worry if you've forgotten most of it. Then we'll look at some specific examples to see how writers enjoy using these myths. So this is a famous example. Most of it I've gotten from the internet. This is Hamlet in chastising his mother, saying, you know, see what you gave up for Claudius. So see what a great, it's talking about his father, what a grace. There's a photograph in her bedroom, and Hamlet is, well, not a photograph, an image, a painting probably. And Hamlet is pointing to it and telling Gertrude, see what a grace was seated on this brow, Hyperion's curls. So first allusion, Hyperion, the father of Helios, the god of the sun, the front of Jove himself, that's Zeus, an eye like Mars, the god of war, to threaten and command, a station like the herald Mercury, Mercury as the standard image of male beauty in Greek mythology, always depicted as a beautiful effete, as a young boy at the height of his beauty, ready to be initiated into manhood. New lighted on a heaven-kissing hill, wonderful line. a combination. So new lighted on a heaven-kissing hill is, you can imagine watching him from afar on top of a hill, new lighted, perhaps sunrise, and it's the sunrise and the hill is high because it's kissing the heaven, and you're seeing this image of sublime beauty. Great line. Shakespeare has his moments, a combination and a form indeed. Yes, where every god did seem to set his seal. So this is very basic usage, right? You want to emphasize strength, you say strong as Heracles. You want to emphasize male beauty, you would use Mercury, etc. So just quick, you can see some curls. I hope you can see the cursor. And there's, I think that's Helios, but I can get away with pretending that's Hyperion, right? Mars statues always, in Greek mythology, Mars is a nasty piece of work, petulant, petty, belligerent, spoiled. In Ares, I'm using the Latin name, Ares in the Greek version, the Greek god of war, is all those things. The Roman Mars is a completely different creature. He is noble and majestic the way Romans thought of war. So there's the piercing eye, some images of Mercury. Sorry, I go quickly because we've wasted so much time. Another example, this is from a picture of Dorian Gray. I really can't see any resemblance between you with your rugged, strong face and your coal-black hair and this young Adonis who looks as if he was made out of ivory and rose leaves. Right? So here, again, comparing Dorian to one of the most beautiful creatures, the boy who made 3 goddesses fall in love with him, Aphrodite, Artemis, and what was the other one? The goddess of dawn. I've forgotten her name, but in some versions they fight over him. So some old paintings of Adonis. Each century had its own ideals of beauty, of course. It goes for both females and males. Another Oscar Wilde, this one is to the Gorgon. Gorgons, remember, creatures with bad hairdo and very piercing eyes. Her mother is perfectly unbearable, never met such a Gorgon. I don't really know what a Gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. So this is how the Greeks saw the Gorgons. There were 3 of them, 2 of them immortal because they were born monsters. One of them, Medusa, who was a young, innocent, beautiful girl, but for some reason, Poseidon rapes her in Athena's temple, and Athena, because she's scared of her uncle, takes it out on the human girl, typical. So she is turned into Medusa, rather humorous picture. And this is Lady Bracknell. And you can see sort of the resemblance a little. They do make them like a Gorgon, which I thought was very nice. Often a man even plays the part, as in this case. All right, quickly, another example. This is Byron. O Rome, my country, city of the soul, the orphans of the heart must turn to thee, lone mother of dead empires, the Niobe of nations. There she stands, childless and crownless. Niobe, as you recall, committed hubris by saying, people, you should stop worshipping Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis, because she only had 2 beautiful children. I had, I think, 7 boys and 7 girls. and they're each beautiful and I'm better. So very dangerous thing to do. The moment the siblings Apollo and Artemis hear this, they come and shoot all of them. So Niobe was turned into a stone, perpetually crying, perhaps inspired by some stones we see near waterfalls where some water seeps through, an etiological myth. And here's some depiction on a Greek vase. So Byron is saying, Rome, the great empire, all things pass, all empires fall, and Rome has lost all its beautiful domains now, childless and crownless, the Niobe of nations. Right? If you recall, I said we interpret the question how the author has used it. The correct answer on the exam would be Byron, instead of saying Rome was once great and had a great empire, is now not so great, has fallen and doesn't have the empire anymore. At least it has the spiritual empire only. So instead of explaining that, which is boring, you just say Niobe of nations and it's great. This is from Julius Caesar. This is at the beginning, before they have assassinated Caesar, and Cassius is saying, what's the difference between Caesar and us? In fact, I even helped him once, saved his life, right? Why does he think he should be king and tyrant, etc.? But ere we could arrive the point proposed, Caesar cried there in the river, "Help me, Cassius, or I sink. I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor, did the flames of Troy upon his shoulder, the old Anchises bear, so from the waves of Tiber did I, the tired Caesar." So I, like Aeneas, that carried his aged father Anchises on his shoulder as he left the burning Troy to found Rome, to found the dynasty that eventually his descendants found Rome, right? I took Caesar on my shoulder. Now, this is slightly at a, let's say, level 2 of allusion, because more is going on. It's not simply saying, I'm as strong as Heracles, I'm as beautiful as this, I'm as noble as Zeus, etc. There's more to it. And this is where it becomes very interesting. Remember, Aeneas as the image, the Roman hero with all the qualities inherent, as the person who makes the greatest sacrifice, putting aside his personal taste, his own love, his own inclinations, and devoting himself to his duty. And by the end of the Aeneid, going almost crazy, becoming a robotic killing machine. And I think that's intended by Virgil to show the great cost that Aeneas has paid, the price he has paid. So Cassius, by comparing himself to Aeneas, right, is indirectly saying, look, here we have Julius Caesar, who, as the direct descendant, right? Julius claimed, they all trace their ancestry to Troy, and Aeneas's mother was Venus. So he's saying, look, we have this Aeneas who founded Rome. He put his personal tastes away, did his duty, and here we have Caesar who's doing the exact opposite. So it's full of irony when he uses the reference to Aeneas. Right? And of course, when he puts himself in Aeneas's position, he's saying, by assassinating, wanting to assassinate Caesar, I'm upholding what Aeneas stood for. Two more like this, and we'll move on. Again, another famous example. Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds. This is Juliet on the balcony, anxiously expecting his Romeo, right? And she's impatient and is addressing the horses of the chariot of the sun. Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus's lodging. So go home, right? Such a wagoner as Phaeton would whip you to the west and bring in cloudy night immediately. The story of Phaeton, if you recall, he was the son of Helios, and someone told him, no, that's a lie, you're not. And so he goes to his mother, and the mother sends him to Helios. Helios says, yes, you're my son. Sorry, I haven't been a good father. I will grant you any wish you'd like. Now, if this was a story, this was referenced in the story about family life, you might say the reference is to bad parenting, because you would never grant a white blank check to a child. Phaeton says, okay, daddy, I want to drive your chariot. And daddy realizes the faux pas is made, and he says, son, even Zeus doesn't dare to drive my chariot. Would you like a Ferrari? Something else. And says, no, I want to do that. Now, if this was in a text, or a romantic text, in which you got a romantic hero whose dream was beyond human possibility, but the fact that had a dream was the important thing to the romantic, the individual, etc., then that aspect would be emphasized. But here, the aspect that's emphasized is, I want night to come quickly, right? So he says, Juliet, oh, let me finish the story. So Phaeton gets on the chariot, immediately loses control. The sun is going all over. In Ovid's version, it burns a bit of Africa. That's why it's desert there. Eco-criticism, people. And the gods turn to Zeus and say, do something about it. And Zeus zaps him with one of his bolts. And that's the end of Phaeton. So Juliet is saying, I wish Phaeton was driving the chariot this afternoon, this evening, because I can't wait for the sun to set so Romeo would come. Obviously, the student would go on to say, the great yearning on the part of Juliet is emphasized by Shakespeare by implying that Juliet is willing to risk the world in her eagerness, and the even smarter, more experienced student would say, aha, also, since Phaeton came to a tragic end, Shakespeare is also foreshadowing the fate of Juliet and Romeo. So you see how you have level 2 and you have level 3. There's hundreds, if you do Google searches on many of these, there are hundreds and hundreds of wonderful old masters. Here's one version, there's Phaeton, and of course, it's a great vehicle for showing off your skills as a painter. There's another one. There's a medieval woodcut, and in these, and you see, very similar to the Life of Christ sequences and paintings, where you see the details of all the events in the birth and crucifixion depicted in one painting. Here we have, there's Helios, there's the young Phaeton, there's his follower of the chariot. These are three, maybe the Fates over here, and this young man on the left, not quite sure who that is, but I like this one very much. And do notice the little drawings on the columns. I think it's a wonderful touch by the medieval painter. Moving on, another Phaeton example. This is from Richard II. Bolingbroke, soon to become Henry IV, has sort of landed, and Richard's armies have been defeated, or they have dispersed, and Richard is almost a prisoner in some castle somewhere. So the victors politely have come. Bolingbroke has sent Northumberland to ask Richard, sort of ask in quotation mark, to please come and say hello. So Northumberland is in sort of on stage, and Richard would be on a balcony, suggesting a window in the tower. My lord, in the base court he doth attempt to speak with you. May it please you to come down. Now, base court is a common name for one area in those castles. You had a higher court and base court. So Richard here, down I come like glistering Phaeton, wanting, as in lacking, the manage of unruly jades. So not being able to control jades is a word for old, worn out horses. So not being able to manage these disobedient jades, you people who have sort of insurrected against your king, which is a no-no. In the base court, base court, where kings grow base to come at traitors' calls and do them grace. In the base court, come down, down court, down king. Right? Now, Richard is saying, I understand what's going on. You know, I'm defeated and you're simply being polite, but I'm like Phaeton, who is, after all, has a god, a titan as his father. I'm noble, you are like horses, you are like worn out, disobedient, treacherous, you are traitors. All right? And it's using Phaeton again, saying, even though I'm going to be defeated, I have not been able to manage the chariots of state, the horses of state, if you like, but at least I'm better than you are. One more. Juliet, bondage is hoarse and may not speak aloud, else would I tear the cave where echo lies and make her airy tongue more hoarse than mine, with repetition of my Romeo's name. So fancy way of saying, I just want to speak the name of my beloved all the time. I want to say Romeo, Romeo, what a beautiful name, Romeo, which is what you do if you're a teenager and you're madly in love. So Echo, if you recall, was cursed by Hera through no fault of Echo's to never have the last word, always being able to simply repeat what someone else had said, because she thought Echo had wasted her time when she was chasing Zeus on one of his escapades. Echo, I suppose, would be the equivalent of certain unfortunate people we all know who just cannot stop talking, right? They go from one reference to another, and at some point you have to run away, right? So Echo probably was like that. And Juliet is saying, I will out-echo Echo by just mentioning the name of Romeo. Bleak House, Dickens, the deadlocks, if you recall, are in the second chapter of Bleak House. The whole chapter is full of allusions to death and stagnation, the same way as that Lady Deadlock is, even her name is dead, right? She has no joy of life, and everything in that chapter is awful. And the house where they live, of course, is also like a mausoleum, right? With paintings of old ancestors, all dead along the rooms. It's dark. There are no children. There's no life. So what better servant, butler to have or be referred to as a Mercury, because one of the duties of Mercury was to conduct the souls of the dead to the underworld. And if you see paintings, images of, for example, Orpheus, he's always accompanied by, there's a Mercury there in the painting. So here, another way of Dickens saying, you know, the deadlocks live in a dead place. They symbolize stagnation of death here, is by referring to their butler as a Mercury. So at her house in town upon this muddy Mercury afternoon presents himself an old-fashioned old gentleman who has the honor of acting as legal advisor to of the deadlocks, across the hall and up the stairs and along the passages. So reminiscent of the passage, you know, the winding, tunnely passage usually you have to go through to reach the land of the dead. If you recall Pip in Great Expectations, he had to go through a dark tunnel when his candle was blown out, the candle that Estella had given him, and he goes through this dark hallway and then enters the world of Miss Havisham. So same idea. Across the hall and up the stairs and along the passages and through the rooms, which are very brilliant in the season and very dismal. Out of it, fairyland to visit, but a desert to live in. The old gentleman is conducted by a Mercury in powder to my lady's presence. So this is the illustration in the book. And there you see, this is another occasion someone visits them, but there you can see the Mercury there, dressed in fancy clothes. Okay, now, the second way of referencing mythology is structural. The most famous example, we have Joyce's Ulysses, and you can see this is again from internet. The person who's put this up has kindly shown the relationship between each chapter to the events in the Odyssey. Okay? So we don't have to go through it in detail, just to show that you can have that structure. Another example, I thought I put this in just to point out that you get this not just in literature, the use of structural mythology, but you can get it in films too. If anyone recalls this film, Chocolat, with Juliette Binoche and what's his name, Johnny Depp, this is based on Euripides' Bacchae. In the Bacchae, if you recall, Dionysus comes back, he says, you know, my family treated me badly, now the least you can do is to worship me. Pentheus, his cousin, Dionysus's cousin, who's a bit of a straight-laced young man, inexperienced, says, no, I don't know, you're crazy, you're lying, you're not a god, even though Cadmus says, you know, pay attention, you know, it's always good to play it safe. Pentheus will have none of it. So Dionysus hypnotizes him and sends him to the country to be torn apart by the Maenads, his female worshippers who are performing Dionysian rites in the countryside, as they're wont to do. In this case, Juliette Binoche, her magic is making chocolates, right? And the straight-laced mayor, played wonderfully by Alfred Molina on the right, is the Pentheus figure who wants to get rid of her and does not believe in her magic. So, in the course of the film, she does her magic, everyone, and she can guess what flavor each client, each customer would like, which is another reference to her magic qualities. There, that's the vitrine. You can see her wares on. And so one night, I won't tell you the plot, the mayor starts tasting the chocolate. Deep down, he really wants to, but he's been lying to himself. And the result is that he just gorges on the chocolate all night and is found fainted and oblivious to everything by Juliette Binoche. And, well, I let you watch the film if you haven't. Pretty Woman, this is based on the Cinderella myth, if you recall, not strictly mythology, but I consider all those, as I said at the beginning, within the same family. So there you see on the right the transformation, and here is where the fairy godfather, in this case, Richard Gere, instead of a magic wand, he has a magic plastic card, credit card, that is, and gives it to her and says, go and buy your clothes, and that's the transformation. And at the end, Richard Gere, I think, comes on a white horse, in case anyone missed the fairy tale references. Now, a lot of my students don't know Pretty Woman, but in its day, it was pretty famous. I hope some of you at least have watched the film. But another structural example is the whole quest to the land of the dead. We saw a bit in Bleak House. The most famous example of that, besides Homer and Virgil, when they literally journey to the underworld, is Heart of Darkness, right? Marlowe and Kurtz. Since we started late, I won't read through this. This is, remember I said the pathway to the land of the dead, just as in the Greek version, you have the river Styx, and usually you have to go through a cave or something, and its water is especially important. But you get many examples. Venice is a famous favorite place representing land of the dead because you have to enter through the waterway, but sometimes a drain. You might see in films where the camera zooms on the water going down the drain. That's usually a sign. Any labyrinthine, tunnely structure with water in it is a sure sign that the director, filmmaker, writer is taking you to the land of the dead. If you read the book or saw the movie Deliverance, you might get a sense of that. Don't Look Now, Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland. People my age might remember that film. Again, that is a journey to the land of dead in which he sort of dies. He doesn't manage to escape, etc. Heart of Darkness, Marlowe. This is the place where he describes the pathway. You could see on the map the river resembling an immense snake uncoiled with its head in the sea, etc. I'll move on quickly. And this is where the whole primordial, stagnant, death-like atmosphere is described in great detail. Again, I think I'll skip over. And usually in literature, how it works is when you go to the land of death, you have a challenge, and if you're successful, you come back. You manage to survive it. If you're unsuccessful, you stay there and you die, either symbolically or literally. In the case of this novel, Marlowe has the advantage, and he explains it here, is Kurtz, who had gone before him, he loses the battle, right? He stays there. He steps over the boundary, as it were. But Marlowe gets a glimpse of what's beyond on the other side, right? And he doesn't get the full experience, but he gets a taste of it enough to gain some wisdom and then return safely. So this is how he describes it. Conrad describes it. It is his extremity, that's the underlying bit, that I seem to have lived through. True, he had made that last stride. He had stepped over the edge, while I had been permitted to draw back my hesitating foot. And perhaps in this is the whole difference. Perhaps all the wisdom and all truth and all sincerity are just compressed into that inappreciable moment of time in which we step over the threshold of the invisible. Anyway, another thing you can look out when it's a journey to the underworld is there's usually a figure, a doorkeeper, if you like, a sibyl. In the case of Aeneas, for example, who is like sometimes a guide, sometimes a doorkeeper. In Don't Look Now, the one with Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland, there's a moment where there's a statue of a satyr and Donald Sutherland goes and stares into it. That is representative of the gatekeeper. In The Heart of Darkness, he describes a funny looking figure. Suddenly I got it. He looked like a harlequin. His clothes had been made of some stuff that was brown Holland probably, but it was covered with patches all over, with bright patches, blue, red, and yellow, patches on the back, patches on the front. So a very unusual character is the point. In Death in Venice, another wonderful journey to the underworld, to the land of the dead. Remember Aschenbach, a dried sort of stream, I think is the translation from German. He is sort of in the book, a writer. In the movie, the Visconti's version of it, he is Gustav Mahler. He's a composer, right? And they have lost their mojo, they have lost their inspiration, and they are close to death. And in Death in Venice, you get a funny character on the boat, just as the boat is taking him to Venice. No sooner had Aschenbach set eyes on him that he realized what a kind of terror that this ephebe was false. He was ancient, right? He's decorated like a young man, but in fact is an old man. It's all makeup and it is looking grotesque, like the Harlequin in Heart of Darkness. He was an ancient. There could be no doubt about it. Wrinkles surrounded his mouth and eyes. The meek crimson of his cheeks was makeup. That brown hair below the colorfully banded straw hat was a wig. His neck was dilapidated and sinewy. His mustache was dyed, etc., etc. And Visconti, of course, picks up on this, and this is the character in the movie. And he addresses Aschenbach, and Aschenbach sort of runs away, if you recall. Okay. Now, this is a third type of examples I'd like to present to you. This is when the whole poem, I'm using poems mostly because, you know, they're self-sufficient and small enough to just use as an example. This is by County Cullen. He was a 20th century poet, very active in the 1920s and 30s. Right? Let me just read it for you quickly. Yet do I marvel. I doubt not God is good, well-meaning, kind, and did he stoop to quibble, could tell why the little buried mole continues blind, why flesh that mirrors him must someday die, make plain the reason tortured Tantalus is baited by the fickle fruit, declare if merely brute caprice dooms Sisyphus to struggle up a never-ending stair, inscrutable his ways are, and immune to catechism by a mind too strewn with petty cares to slightly understand what awful brain compels his awful hand. So, I'm sure God is merciful and compassionate and loves us, and if he deigned to answer any of our questions, would probably explain why we have a blind mole that spends all his life underground, why the flesh that mirrors him, man, humankind, is not immortal and has to die. Nobody likes to die. Make plain why Tantalus is eternally tortured. Remember, Tantalus, for fighting against Zeus, is punished to be in a pool with fruit hanging above him and water below him, but every time he wants to drink or eat the fruit, they move away from him. So he's eternally thirsty and hungry. Right? I think the point here is the sadism involved in eternal torture. Right? What's the point of torture if not, you know, as punishment and eventual rehabilitation? But what sort of God would sanction eternal torture? You know, sadistic God. So same way with Sisyphus, having to push the stone up just for it to roll down, etc. So his ways are inscrutable, and religious writings are beyond the humble understanding of the poet here. And here is the climax, right? Yet do I marvel at this curious thing to make a poet black and bid him sing. And that's the climax, in which, besides all these horrible things that we can think of, the worst thing God can do is to give the gift of poetry to a black person, right, who can't help producing poetry and singing. And the idea is that the racism in the 1920s, 30s that Mr. Cullen faced was horrible, and this is how he expresses it. And the Greek reference is really to show that this society is beyond sadistic in the way they treat a large number of their population. Joseph Brotzky, wonderful poet. I like him very much. Unfortunately, I can only read him in translation. Odysseus to Telemachus. Now, usually I tend to read it first and then go through it. But again, we don't have much time, so I'll tell you beforehand what to look out for. Right? Now, this is the poem. It's one of my favorites, in which Odysseus's character, his gift of language, what a bastard he is, how manipulative he is, what a great liar he is. All that is encompassed in this letter that he's sending to his son. Now, pay attention, look out for how he constantly justifies himself and how he tries to blame everything on everyone else except himself. So this is a poem about father-son relationship. It's Oedipal in a roundabout way. You just need to think about it a little bit. And it's, as I said, a fantastic character study. If you want to read this as a dramatic monologue, it's certainly worthy of Browning and other great practitioners of that genre. Right? So make a checklist of how Odysseus constantly tries to defend himself against charges of being a bad father, of being a bad hero, of being a bad Greek, of being a bad lover, everything. My dear Telemachus, the Trojan War is over now. I don't recall who won it. I must be sort of in shock. I must have had dementia from the battle. I don't recall who won it. The Greeks, no doubt, for only they would leave so many dead so far from their homeland. I didn't want to go in the first place, if you recall. They're, such bloodthirsty people, no doubt they won. But still, my homeward way has proved too long. And I'm sorry, it's, I haven't returned yet. While we were wasting time there, old Poseidon, it almost seems, stretched an extended space. He's out to get me, right? He's the reason I'm having all these problems, which is true in a way. I don't know where I am or what this place can be. I'm still a bit bewildered. It would appear some filthy island with bushes, buildings, and great grunting pigs. More likely Circe's place than Calypso's because of the grunting pigs. If you recall, Circe was the witch who turned Odysseus's men into pigs. A garden choked with weeds, some queen or other. There's this gorgeous witch with whom I've been spending a whole year in my haste to get back to you, and some queen or other. Grass and huge stones, nothing to, don't think I'm having a good time here. Telemachus, my son. To a wanderer, the faces of all islands resemble one another, and the mind trips, numbering waves, eyes soar from sea horizons, run, and the flesh of water stuffs the ears. I can't remember how the war came out, repeating himself. Even how old you are, I can't remember. Right? I'm in shock, I'm having trouble. Grow up then, my Telemachus, grow strong. Only the gods know if we'll see each other again. You've long since ceased to be that babe before whom I reigned in the ploughing bullocks. Remember, Odysseus had pretended he was crazy and he was sowing the field with salt, but Palamedes, smart man himself, puts the baby Telemachus in front of the plow, and Odysseus sort of does a detour, swerves aside, and has to confess that he's not crazy. So you've long since ceased to be that babe before whom I reigned in the ploughing bullocks. Had it not been for Palamedes' trick, we two would still be living in one household. Right? Again, not my fault. But maybe he was right. Away from me, you are quite safe from all Oedipal passions. Look, there's some benefits, right? If I'm not there, you're happy with your mother and satisfying all your Oedipal needs, and your dreams, my Telemachus, are blameless. So you wouldn't be dreaming about killing me. And I like it very much that the poem ends with the word blameless, which is what Odysseus is trying to do with this letter. All right. A lot more to be said about the little delicacies in this poem, but we have to go quickly. This is another one by a favorite poet of mine, Louise Gluck. She's contemporary, she's alive. The Myth of Innocence. This is about Demeter and Persephone. I'm sure you all remember. Young girl Persephone out in the field with her maidens. Various versions how she moves away from the girls, but at some point Hades, her uncle, remember Demeter, Zeus, Hera, and Hades and Poseidon are all siblings. Her uncle comes out in his chariot, sees Persephone, or in some versions had seen her and had designs on her and had consulted Zeus beforehand, but not her mother Demeter. He comes, grabs her, takes her to the underground where she eats some fruit, and when you eat of the place, part of that place stays with you anyway. And Demeter is upset, says nothing will grow. Demeter, as a mother nature type figure, says nothing will grow until I get my daughter back. The situation is dire. So Zeus calls a meeting and says, okay, Hades, you get her for so many months. Demeter, you get her for the rest. And that's explanation of the change of seasons. So nature is sad when her daughter Persephone is away in the underworld, and we have sort of late autumn and winter, and when she returns in spring and summer, there's lots of blooming and flowering going on. Now, Gluck uses this myth and tells this story from the point of view of Persephone, and this is a young girl trying to come to terms with her emotions and growing up, basically. See how it goes. The Myth of Innocence. So myth, a pun there. So innocence, when you refer to a young person as innocent, how innocent is that person really? And of course, the myth, as in the myth of Demeter and Persephone. So this is Persephone being described. One summer, she goes into the field as usual, stopping for a bit at the pool where she often looks at herself. We tend to do that as teenagers, to see if she detects any changes. We're eager to grow up. She sees the same person, the horrible mantle of daughterliness still clinging to her. And we want to become independent. We want to find a husband. The sun seems in the water very close. That's my uncle spying again. Well, it's sort of Zeus and Helios were cousins, so it's not a direct brother of Demeter, but a cousin, uncle. So once removed. That's my uncle spying again, she thinks. Everything in nature is in some way her relative. So imagine you're a teenager, you're embarrassed about your parents, about grown-ups, they all tell you what to do, you have no independence, you have no freedom to do what you like. I think many of you remember that. And imagine Persephone, this is funny, I think, saying the whole nature responds to her mother, right? Her mother is nature, so she has absolutely no freedom. She's always under observation, if not from nature, from the sun as well. So incredibly suppressed feelings. I am never alone, she thinks, turning the thought into a prayer, saying, I wish I were alone. And be careful what you wish for, then death appears like the answer to a prayer. No one understands anymore how beautiful he was. Hades. But Persephone remembers also that he embraced her right there, with her uncle the sun, watching. She remembers sunlight flashing on his bare arms. we, in traumatic moments, experiences, we tend to focus on details. I think bare arms might be reminiscent of True Frog as well, when he notices the fuzz on the arm of the ladies who talk of Michelangelo. This is the last moment she remembers clearly. Then the dark god bore her away. She also remembers less clearly the chilling insight that from this moment she couldn't live without him again. She's besotted, she's in love. The girl who disappears from the pool will never return. Right? You've moved to a different stage in your growth. A woman will return, looking for the girl she was. She stands by the pool saying from time to time, I was abducted, but it sounds wrong to her. Right? This is referring to the title bit, The Myth of Innocence. How much do we really want something like that to happen, even if we might deny it directly? Right? A rape is a rape, right? But was it a rape from her point of view? Well, she's not sure. I was abducted, but it sounds wrong to her, nothing like what she felt. Then she says, I was not abducted. Then she says, I offered myself. I wanted to escape my body. Even sometimes I willed this. But ignorance cannot will knowledge. Ignorance wills something imagined, which it believes exists. Now, a lot there about teenagers, what dreams they have, what they imagine, what reality is like, what happens. So, but we don't have time, and it's not important as long as we realize how incredibly powerful use of mythological stories can be, and what great tools it gives artists. Right? All the different nouns, she says them in rotation. Death, husband, God, stranger. Everything sounds so simple, so conventional. I must have been, she thinks, a simple girl. She can't remember herself as that person, but she keeps thinking the pool will remember and explain to her the meaning of her prayer. Remember when she was saying, I want freedom at the beginning, so she can understand whether it was answered or not. And what happened, Hades, falling in love with Hades, being abducted, all that, was that what she really wanted or wasn't it? Well, she's not sure. To change the mood, this is another Demeter and Persephone poem, but much more comic, right? But just as insightful and touching, I think. Now, the setting is Paris. Demeter here is an aristocratic, rich woman whose daughter, unfortunately, has taken up with some bohemian lowlife, and she's terribly concerned, right? Both for her daughter, she's embarrassed that her daughter has, is living in sin with some, lowlife artist, and they've set up a meeting at a cafe, at a restaurant, probably an expensive restaurant because of the mother, and Persephone probably doesn't allow her to come and visit and be critical, no doubt. Okay, it's called the Bistro Styx. Now, the Styx reminds us that the underworld is the myth we're talking about. It's told from the point of view of the mother. She was thinner, with a mannered gauntness, as she paused just inside the double glass doors to survey the room. Right, the first things mothers realize is, you've lost weight. Are you eating well? Right? So she seems to have lost weight. silvery cape billowing dramatically behind her. Right? Very nice, dramatic. What's this? I thought, lifting a hand until she nodded. So she's waving, I'm sitting at this table. She nodded and started across the parquet. That's when I saw she was dressed all in grey, from a kittenish cashmere skirt and cowl down to the graphite signature of her shoes. So it makes sense if you're coming from the underworld to be in very somber hues, dark grey. Sorry I'm late, she panted, though she wasn't. Sliding into the chair, her cape tossed off in a shudder of brushed steel. So again, that grey color emphasized. We kissed. Then I leaned back to peruse my blighted child. A blighted, wonderful word to use if you are Demeter and blight is your land, the fields might be blighted during a natural catastrophe. So Demeter, that would be a nice way to see her child blighted. This wary aristocratic mole. So mole, underground, right, where Persephone has gone, and aristocratic because, well, after all, she's a goddess, so is Persephone, and in the analogy would be from some rich aristocratic family. How's business? I asked, and hazarded a motherly smile to keep from crying out. Are you content to conduct your life as a cliché and what's worse, an anachronism, the brooding artist's demi-monde? Right? This is what I wanted to shout at her. What are you doing with your life? But I controlled myself and very carefully hazarded with a sort of neutral smile, motherly smile. How's business? How are things? Some background. Near the Rue Princesse, they had opened a gallery-cum souvenir shop which featured fuzzy off-color Monets next to his acrylics. No doubt. Plus bearded African drums and occasional miniature gargoyle from Notre Dame, the great artist had carved at breakfast with a pocket knife. The great artist being this low-life painter who does copies of Impressionist painting, and etc. So some sort of stand, if you've been to European capitals, especially Paris, you see all these secondhand people selling these things to tourists. Tourists love us. The Parisians, of course, she blushed, she's a bit embarrassed, are amused, though not without a certain admiration. So we get good business from tourists. The locals, the Parisians, they're amused, but they certainly are impressed by, we don't get what they're impressed. The food arrives, the filet of the Chateaubriand. So the sentence is, arrived on a bone-white plate, smug and absolute in its fragrant crust, a black plug steaming like the heart plucked from a chest of a worthy enemy. That's how the mother is feeling now. She wants to pluck the heart out of this boy has ruined her daughter. One touch with her fork sent pink juices streaming. So she likes to poke the boy as well. So just remind you of the sentence. It says, are amused though not without a certain admiration. Admiration for what? Now, again, more blood imagery. Wine, a bloody Pinot Noir, brought color to her cheeks. Why? The aplomb with which we've managed to support our art. They're impressed by the way we've been managing to survive. And to the mother is, meaning he'd convinced her to pose nude for his appalling canvases. Faintly futuristic landscapes strewn with car wrecks and bodies being chewed. Again, her feelings is described in images by rabid Cocker Spaniels. But She doesn't say that. She ventures, can I come visit you? I'd like to come by the studio, I ventured, and see see the new stuff. Yes, if you wish, as in, not really. I don't think it's a good idea. A delicate rebuff before the warning. He dresses all in black now. Me, he drapes in blues and carmine. Carmine is rich red, bloody red. And even though I think it's kind of cute, in company I tend towards more muted shades. She paused and had the grace to drop her eyes. She did look ravishing, spookily insubstantial. So spooky, like a ghost, insubstantial, as in dead. A lipstick ghost on tissue. Or as if one stood on a fifth-floor terrace peering through a fringe of rain at Paris's dreaming chimney pots, each sooty issue wobbling skyward in an ecstatic, oracular spiral, sort of undead scenery, right? Lots of smoke coming, dark vista of the urban landscape. And he never thinks of food. I wish I didn't have to plead with him to eat. Fruit and cheese appeared, arrayed on leaf green dishes. So he dresses all in black, doesn't eat, right? So this modern Hades. The mother can't eat. I stock with cafe creme. This camembert is so ripe, she joked, Persephone. It's practically grown hair. Yeah. Mucking a golden glob complete with parsley sprig onto a heel of bread. So she's making herself a nice little morsel, bread, lots of camembert, runny, sort of ripe, smelly. She is famished because the only thing she'd eaten in the myth was one grain of pomegranate, if you recall. Nothing seemed to fill her up. And also, if you have no money and living with this low life, probably you don't have enough money to eat. So when your mother takes you to a expensive restaurant, you do nothing but eat. She swallowed, sliced into a pear, speared each. Remember, Demeter likes to do a lot of cutting and spearing and slicing, and that's how she sees the actions of the daughter. So the fruit, the fig, she sliced into a pear, speared each tear-shaped lavalier, and that's the shape of the pear. Lavalier are those lockets. There's a little frame with a stone inside that you hang on a necklace. So the pear is shaped usually in that oval structure, and popped the dripping mess into her pretty mouth. So a lot of messy eating. Nowhere the bright tufted fields, wade vines and sun poured down out of the south. So this is what Demeter would like, right? Nice fields, full vines, sun pouring down. Nowhere are any of these insights. She's going to go back to Hades. But are you happy? Fearing, I whispered it quickly. What? You know, mother. She bit into the starry rose of a fig. Imagine those purple figs. You cut it in half and there's, those rich red seeds inside. One really should try the fruit here. I've lost her, I thought, and called for the bill. Right? No hope. She's not coming back. I've lost my daughter. So here you can, again, another aspect of human life, in this case, a mother worried about her daughter who's living, with someone she disapproves of, is used in this case. Now, this is very apropos because the myth itself of a mother losing her daughter is very much goes to the heart of Greek society. If you recall, in Greek society, the joke, not so much a joke, was that a woman should leave the house twice in her lifetime. One to go to her husband's house, one to go to the cemetery. Right? And when the daughter was married off, and she wasn't asked, she wasn't consulted. One day, the male ruler of the household, the husband, the father, or if they were dead, the uncle, the cousin, male cousin, would come and inform the 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, you're getting married in about 2 minutes, pack, let's go. And that was it. And if the husband, the to-be, lived far away, probably the mother and daughter would maybe not see each other ever again, or maybe by chance. Now, if they lived in the same neighborhood, maybe at the well, at the watering hole, they would see each other. So the myth and the happy ending, at least semi-happy, where the daughter does come and spend 6 months of the year with the meter, is very consoling to mothers and daughters of Greek society. And you can see how that idea, the poet brilliantly, and Ms. Dove is a fantastic poet, American poet laureate for a while, she has used that, a beautiful, perfect way to update a myth in every sense. We're getting towards the end, don't worry. This is, if you don't know, this is a wonderful poem by Muriel Rukeyser, another fantastic poet. Now, Myth, excellent title because it brings into question a whole series of issues related to the responsibility of myth and how much it's male-oriented, and how long it's been male-oriented, right? So I think the title is perfect. And this is written in the 70s at the height of the feminist movement. Remember, Gloria Steinem and all that. Myth, long afterward, Oedipus, old and blinded, walked the roads. He smelled a familiar smell. Remember in Oedipus Rex, the myth of Oedipus, Thebes is threatened by this Sphinx, asked people 3 questions. One riddle. If they can answer it, they can move on. If not, the Sphinx will kill them. And no one had been able to do that until Oedipus, the hero, comes and answers the question. And the riddle was, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? And the answer is man, because you walk on, you're a toddler, you crawl in the middle of your life, you're strong, you stand on your 2 feet, and at the end you have a walking stick, so it's 3 legs. And Oedipus manages to answer that. The Sphinx, in most versions, goes crazy, kills herself, and Oedipus is hailed as the hero by the Thebans, given his mother Jocasta as wife, and the story continues. I'm sure everyone knows that, just a reminder. So long afterwards, after he's been blinded and exiled, Oedipus, old and blinded, walked the roads. He smelled a familiar smell. It was the Sphinx. Oedipus said, I want to ask one question. Now, this is old, wise Oedipus, not the detective, the proud detective we see in Sophocles' play. I want to ask one question. Why didn't I recognize my mother? You gave the wrong answer, said the Sphinx. The Sphinx is female, by the way. But that was what made everything possible, said Oedipus. I did give the right answer, which was man. No, she said. When I asked what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, you answered man. You didn't say anything about woman. When you say man, said Oedipus, you include women too. Everyone knows that. She said, that's what you think. I hope you can see how this very beautifully draws all these issues of the male-oriented interpretations and creations of myths in which the women's side is not considered. You know, well, everyone knows that when you say man, you mean human beings. Well, you haven't all these thousands of years. I've used story of Orpheus and Eurydice to sort of illustrate this. There are hundreds of examples. There are a lot of Odysseus and Penelope poems, for example, in which, you know, Penelope is pointing out this discrepancy in various ways. Here we have images of, you know, the male hero, confident, brave, courageous, strident, and the poor, weak woman who needs to hold on with both hands to be supported in this dangerous mission. We get lots of these. There's another one I didn't bother to find out the painters for these, but notice the Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of Hades. That's another one, you know, heroic male, sort of grateful female, always looking down, obedient, right? But sometimes, even in the old paintings, you might see things that surprise you. This is a nice 1700s Baroque painting. It's in the Louvre, I think. And there's Sisyphus resting. Remember when Oedipus when Orpheus sings for Persephone and Hades, everything stops, right? Such is the magic of his art, that of the beauty of his voice, that everything stops. And he even manages to beguile and convince the king and queen. Here we see Tantalus there with the fruit on the bottom right, chained. There's Sisyphus sitting on his rock. There are the fates nicely pointing, deciding what the outcome will be. And Orpheus is sort of saying, come on, let's go while we can. But notice the look on Orpheus's, on Eurydice's face and her body language. She's looking back with longing, as if she doesn't want to, you know, do I have to? And the expressions on the king and queen's face are also very interesting. Anyway, you want to look at this in more detail, Google, just do Orpheus Eurydice or image search old paintings, and you'll see hundreds of these. Here's another one by Frederick Leighton, who loved these paintings. This is late 19th century. And here you see an even more forceful instance of Eurydice saying, look at me, I don't want to come with you. You know, look at me so I can go back. And Orpheus saying, no, please, no, I want my, I don't know, nurse, cook, cleaner, companion back. This is a poem about women power. Mies Le Guin died recently. Great, not just anthropologist, but great writer. The Maenads, if you remember, are the female worshippers of Dionysus, who traditionally go off in the countryside, are taken over by the god, whether through drugs or drink, and do gain superhuman strength and do horrible things to animals, tear them apart, and then they cool down and come back and continue their ordinary life. This, I thought, was a very wonderful poem expressing women power. not quite sure the date. The Maenads. Somewhere I read that when they finally staggered off the mountain into some strange town, past drunk, hoarse, half-naked, blear-eyed, blood dried under broken nails and across young thighs, but still jeering and joking, still trying to dance, lurching and yelling, ladies' night out, but falling dead asleep by the market stalls, sprawled helpless, flat out. At the end of the celebrations, they're all fainted in the streets everywhere. Then, middle-aged women, respectable housewives, who in their youth had been in that position, right? Then they would come and stand night long in the agora, the marketplace, the central part of the city, silent together as ewes and cows in the night fields, guarding, watching them as their mothers watched over them. Right? When they were young and they, after the celebration, were passed out everywhere, their mothers and grandmothers would come and guard them. And now they're doing it for their daughters. And no man dared that fierce decorum. It's a very powerful poem. And it's the image I find is very mythic, very archetypal, if you like. But we have to move on. Recently, I've just done a quick search and I've been reading some of these as well. There's a huge rise in the number of women who've been updating stories from mythology from the women's point of view and telling these stories. And most of them, at least the ones I've read, are incredibly good and I highly recommend them. I just wanted to show you the covers of some of these. So, 1,000 Ships, of course, the Trojan War, Ariadne, there's the story of Circe, Galatea, remember she's Pygmalion's statue that came to life, Heracles' bow, Lavinia, this is not, this is in the Aeneid, she's the queen of the region where Aeneas has landed and has to find a princess for his bride. The Silence of the Girls, Pat Barker, again about the Trojan women, I think. Children of Jocasta, I think the story is told from Antigone's and Ismenes and Jocasta's point of views. I think there are various female narrators. Margaret Atwood, Penelopiad, just fantastic. I highly recommend that. You get a wonderful Helen and Odysseus. It's told from Penelope's point of view, but the way Helen and Odysseus are pictured, and you can see when one of the best novelists alive today and in the 20th century, I think very, very highly of Margaret Atwood. When you see such a novelist writing about these things, it's just fantastic. You see the change in gear. Again, Song of Achilles, about Achilles and Patroclus growing up. All of them very good. And I'd just like to remind you of the chorus, the second chorus in Euripides' Medea, in which such an event was foretold, or at least hoped for, thousands of years ago. I'll just read it quickly. The chorus is basically saying, you men who have written these stories and have written about us women, if we had the chance to write, what stories we could tell and what scores we could settle and explain. Flow backward to your sources, sacred rivers. Of course, water flowing backwards suggests a huge upheaval. Flow backward to your sources, sacred rivers, and let the world's great order be reversed. this is what it takes for women to be given this chance. It is the thoughts of men that are deceitful, their pledges that are loose. Story shall now turn my condition to a fair one. Women are paid their due. No more shall evil-sounding fame be theirs. Right? Stop bad-mouthing, stop criticizing the women. Now, if this happens, we'll set this right. Cease now, you muses of the ancient singers, right? The bards who were all men, to tell the tale of my unfaithfulness. That's Medea. For not on us did Phoebus, lord of music, bestow the lyre's divine power. Right? Phoebus, the god of music, did not give the task of being a bard to us women, right? For otherwise, I should have sung an answer to the other sex. Long time has much to tell of us and much of them. And what I see is that this dream, I think, has finally come about in this century. And I'm, for one, very happy in reading the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was an extremely interesting talk. Your presentation and content was engaging and wonderful. I'm sure our students benefited a lot from it. This brings us to the question answer session. I now request Professor Shulokina Sengupta to kindly moderate the question answer session.
We just have two questions here. Sarjika Ganguly, she asks, sir, to what extent can we say that mythology is the manifestation of our own lives?
Oh, a lot, to whatever extent you like, because myths, stories, these emerge or created to answer our questions. What we observe, what feelings we have, what questions we have, whether we are aware of it or not. And I cannot think of a single myth that does not relate or sort of expose issues that have to do with human psyche, with human condition. So I think there's no limits on that extension.
One of our students has asked this question, why are Greek and Roman mythology most popular and they score over other mythologies as far as interpretations and uses in the English texts are concerned?
Okay, for various reasons. For one reason, we have more of those. Now, I know very little about Indian mythology, but I know enough to know that it's extensive, it's magnificent, and there's a lot of it. But in the West, or Chinese or Oriental for that matter, but in the West, because classical mythology, along with Judeo-Christian writings like the Bible, are the two bases of not just their culture and civilization, but of their literature and art as well. And that there's a lot of that as opposed to Norse mythology, the other European mythology, is by definition that forms the basis and is the most popular. And also it's very, 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 very good.
I don't have a question, but I have just an observation. When you were speaking about the last part of your talk, now the chorus, the part of the chorus, it reminded me of Mary Wollstonecraft, who happened to be a rebel in her times, and she was also talking about women's liberation and how women's books have been written so far, negating the position of women, etc., etc. So I was just thinking that what a line that can be drawn right from the days of ancient mythology to the present day, and that is something that is amazing. That's what struck me. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
My pleasure.
Over to Tapusri again.
Thank you, Sudokhinadi. I request Torun to kindly formally conclude the session with the vote of thanks. Torun? Torun, are you here?
Oh, thank you, Tapusri.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Tapusri. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to have been asked to offer a vote of thanks on such occasion in our department. On behalf of Dhruba Halder College and the entire English department, I wish to thank and convey my heartfelt gratitude to the Honorable Speaker, Dr. Kian Soheil, for your graceful and well-compiled words in today's webinar. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening and inspiring us with your solid erudition and pedantic words for making this webinar so special. Thank you so much, sir, again.
My pleasure.
I would also
Thank
like
you.
to thank to our Honorable Principal, sir, Dr. Sottobroto Sahu. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Sottobroto Sahu, for your relentless support and continuous encouragement to make this program so successful. And again, I want to extend my generous thanks to Professor Rosidul Karim for his outstanding support for streaming this program on YouTube. I would like to also express my profound gratitude to our loving fifth semester students, Ajimul for presenting a beautiful flyer for this webinar, and also Rakesh for his excellent technical assistance. I must extend my special thanks to our departmental HOD, Professor Sudokina Sengupto, for organizing such program even in her illness. Thank you, Didi. Get well soon. And I personally missing your presence in our department. Finally, I would like to thank to my dear colleagues, Professor Bularani Hauladar and Professor Tapusri Ghosh, for your amazing help and wonderful support for making this program a grand success. Thank you, Bula, and thank you, Tapusri, again. Thank you all. Over to Didi now. If you have any official announcement from our department, you can announce now. Didi.
Thank you, Torun. There is no official announcement on behalf of the department. Again, a very big thank you, and thank you to all the participants as well. You have been patient enough, and you have listened to this talk with rapt attention, I know, and tomorrow when there will be classes, you will have lots of more questions to ask, I'm sure. So with that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you all once again. Please, all of you, take care of yourselves, stay well, and keep well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye from us, from all of us in the department. Bye-bye, sir.
Okay.